This is the Try Swim Coach podcast, where the most difficult leg of the triathlon becomes your friend, leaving your struggles and your competition behind you. TrySwimCoach.com, helping you to laugh at the water.
Welcome to Try Swim Coach. This is Kevin, and this is episode number 96. And in just a minute, I have an interview with the Gary Hall Sr. of theraceclub.com. And it was a really interesting talk. The guy has so much knowledge about swimming, and probably more knowledge than I've ever come across with anybody about swimming. So definitely stay tuned for that. I don't have much to say here. Been away a little bit, been traveling around the world, and got back a few weeks ago and just kind of getting back into things. But really appreciate you listening to this show. And if you do have just a couple minutes, if you can go to iTunes and give us a rating and review, it would be much appreciated. And we will read it on the next show. And we will be back to our regular shows here in September. And it is the off season. We have some things going on at Try Swim Coach for off-season training. It's not quite, a lot of people still have races coming up in the Northern Hemisphere. People in the Southern Hemisphere are just kind of getting underway. So it's a little bit of a transitionary time here. But we are going to be running some 21-day challenges. And we have a member site. It's called Try Swim Pro. You can find out more just by going to our main site, TrySwimCoach.com. And what we're going to do is, we've had this Facebook group for a while, and we have a little chit chat in there about this and that with swimming, but we haven't really made it formal. So we haven't had formal training in the Try Swim Pro group. But what we're going to do starting in October is to add these 21-day challenges as part of the group training. And some of them will be swimming related, some of them will be kind of general fitness related, and some of them will be actually like nutrition. So we did this for a short period of time with a completely separate group, and it was really successful and really popular. So we're going to be bringing that in October to the Try Swim Pro group. So anyway, that's about all I have to say. Without further ado, here's my interview with Gary Hall Sr. Go out there and have a great week of training, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, well, I'm really excited today to have on the show former Olympian and world record holder Gary Hall Sr. After retiring from world-class competition in 1976, Dr. Hall established his medical practice in Phoenix, Arizona, where he owned and operated one of the most successful eye laser centers in America. Throughout his medical career, Dr. Hall continued to compete in triathlons and swimming events, most recently breaking several world records in masters swimming competition. In 2006, he retired from his medical practice in order to devote more time to his family and passion for swimming. He and his wife moved to Isla Madora, Florida, to help direct the operations of the Race Club. And the Race Club provides facilities, coaching, training, technical instruction, video, fitness and health programs for swimmers of all ages and abilities. And the website is theraceclub.com. Gary, welcome to Try Swim Coach.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Great to be on.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. We were talking a little bit before the show. I've actually been following you for a while, and I've linked to some of your videos and just spot on with some of the stroke technique and just seeing the differences between competitive swimming and distance swimming and triathlon swimming and what people actually need. And I think it's great what you guys are doing there. And so one thing on your website, I want to read this one section I thought was really interesting. You said, our objective is for each member of and each participant in the Race Club to improve his or her swimming performances, health, and self-esteem through our educational programs, services, and creativity. Can you talk a little bit more about this philosophy, and how do you accomplish all those things?
The first question I ask the swimmer that comes to us is, they give me three sets of goals. One is, what do you want to achieve while you're here? And sometimes I get them for 2 hours, sometimes I get them for 5 days. 4 hours a day, and I need to understand what it is that's important for them to accomplish. Second is, I always ask them about what their goals are for the season. I look at the year as a seasonally, and each season is a chapter. And in triathlons, where you have varying events during the year, you may not break it up. And in swimming, at least in the U.S. swimming market, we tend to think of this year as 3 different seasons. And so we set goals for each season, and I think that's a real important thing to do for all the athletes, whether triathlete or master swimmers or age group swimmers, is to really know where they're trying to go. And then when are they going to do that? Where are they going to do that? And they have to start to visualize themselves doing that. And then the third important question, and it's always an interesting one, Kevin, and I always ask them, why are they doing it? What's in it for them? A lot of work. There's no easy way. And the answers are different, but I love to hear why what drives them and what the long-term vision is. Where am I going to be 5 years from now or 10 years from now? Am I going to be at what level am I going to get to? But the swimmers are very different, and the needs are very different. You really have three succinct and very different groups of triathletes that really come from usually non-swimming backgrounds. And then you have master swimmers that usually come from a swimming background that have been out of it for some period of time. And then you have the age group swimmers that are really starting on that path. And we have to approach them differently and individually. So we have to get into their head and figure out what it is that they feel they need. And then I try to figure out what they need along the way.
Right, exactly. And so as far as working with triathletes specifically, since this show and my site is geared towards helping triathletes get better at swimming, in terms of triathlon swimming versus like pool swimming, sprint freestyle training, what would like a lesson or a clinic of yours consist of that's different?
Well, first and foremost is, they're really only interested in freestyle. And the other thing is that there's a different mindset. As I said, most of the triathletes who come from non-swimming backgrounds, they tend to think of themselves as not swimmers. They're a runner, they can bicycle, but they're not swimmers. They're just trying to get better at swimming. And so we try to change the mindset into, no, I'm a triathlete. I can do all three sports and I can do them all well. I just have to learn how to be a better swimmer. I have to start thinking like a swimmer. And once we do that, we really change their whole approach to their training. And one of the biggest challenges with the triathlete is that, they have so many hours in a day and they've really got to, budget their time carefully. And swimming is admittedly the least important of the three disciplines. And yet it's really an important one. They're all important. So it's not like they can neglect the swimming totally and expect to be very good at it. In fact, most of them come to me and they say, I train 3 hours a week, 3 1-hour workouts a week, and I don't seem to be getting any better. And I think, what in the world can you do and train and work out 3 hours a week and really get very good at?
Right.
And so I think the expectation is that they can handle a 2-mile or an 800-meter, 1,500-meter swim on 3 1-hour practices a week, and they really can't. So we have to get the training mentality into, okay, I'm not going to take too much away from my bike and run training, but I am going to have to devote more time in a week, and I have to be technically better if I'm going to get better.
Yeah. So then what's the first step? I mean, what do you teach people? I'm sure you work with a lot of kind of beginner, intermediate level type athletes. How would you start out with someone like that that's looking to get better at swimming and be able to compete in a triathlon?
Yeah, so the two most important things we can do to assess the swimmer, besides understanding their mindset, is to do a 45-minute stretch of their body and figure out where they are limited. That's one of the most important things we do. We usually do that either in the first or second session. And it's not just to teach them our pre-workout stretch, which is really important, and unfortunately most triathletes don't do enough of. And in swimming, it's probably more important. It's important in all sports. It's probably more important in swimming than certainly in cycling and running. But we have to know their limitations. And we need to know, in order to be fast swimmer, you have to have certain flexibility. The shoulders, particularly the hip, the ankles are the two weak spots. Mm-hmm. Ankles and the shoulders. And also their core strength, figuring out how strong their core is and how strong their legs are. Their legs are usually strong, but are they kicking strong? And that's a different strength than running or cycling strong. So we evaluate them in the water or on dry land first, and we rate them in every category from their ankles all the way to their cervical spine. We rate them 0 to 10. Where do you stand? And they usually do have 1 or 2 areas that are really, really bad. There may be tight hamstrings or quads, or their core is not strong, or their lower back is really inflexible, or their shoulders are stiff. But we'll figure it out. And then we have to design something to help improve their flexibility, not just for improving their ability to swim, but also preventing injury. Then we get them in the water, and the first 200 they swim, I pretty much size up all the problems that they have. And I'm an observer, and I've trained my eye over the last 10 years as a triathlon coach to be an observer of the really smallest detail. Mm-hmm. And you can only see so much. I can't even see the smallest details. So we augment our ability to find problems with some technology like velocimeter, which has really been extremely important to us in finding the nuances of the swim technique that's slowing them down. And what I don't think is largely appreciated, I think there's an attitude like, this part, I watch all these different swimmers, they all look different, so there must be a big margin of error here that allows you to swim differently and still do okay. And I guess if you're looking at mediocre swimmers, that's probably true. The higher up you get on the scale, Kevin, the more, the faster you are, the more of an elite swimmer you are, the less the margin of error. You start to see a commonality among all the great swimmers and what they're doing. So we take and we do one fundamental at a time. We teach 3 basic fundamentals of the natural laws of forces of drag, the forces of propulsion, and the law of inertia, and try to define how they can improve their technique to minimize frontal drag, which is absolutely the killer. It's the number one enemy of most triathletes. How do we maximize propulsion, or at least increase propulsion, not just by using our hands and feet from our kicking and pulling, but also our bodies in what we call coupling motions, to make the pull and kick more effective. And then third, how do we conform to the law of inertia, meaning how do we keep our speed more constant? How do we not slow down, speed up, which takes an inordinate amount of energy to do versus the energy it takes to keep going at a similar speed.
You were talking about the last thing that triathletes need to be aware of.
Yeah, I think it was with regard to the actual technique. There's 3 really distinctly different types of freestyle. Hip-driven, we call it, shoulder-driven, and what we call a hybrid of the 2. And we have to kind of determine which technique works better for each athlete. And it's not a real easy or obvious solution. It depends on each athlete, not just their anatomy, but their physiology.
Right.
So that's kind of what our goal is, to get them thinking about what they're capable of, improve their technique, and decide which freestyle technique really works best for them. And we often design training programs for them as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned something, I think you said velocimeter?
Yeah, the velocimeter is probably the most important technology we use to really understand the nuances of the technique. And what it does is we measure the velocity of the body and the acceleration and deceleration of the body through every phase of the stroke. So we go frame by frame. We may have 3 or 4 strokes in a video camera, which we sync to the velocity. So we see what the velocity is doing and how it's changing at every point in their stroke cycle. It's incredible to me how much information you can glean from that. You can not only see a dropped elbow and what it's doing to velocity or acceleration or deceleration, you can also measure it. You can quantitate it. And it really helps drive home, to the swimmer when they look at it, and I'm going over it, well, look, you bend your knee too much. You can tell them, well, that's really hurting you. But when you show them that the speed just dropped by 30%, when they did that, it really strikes home. And they don't realize that's happening when they're swimming. There's just too much going on.
Right.
So we can really kind of isolate the problems and not just say, well, they're a problem, but here's why. You have more than 0.5 meters per second difference between your right peak and your left peak trough, or left trough and your right peak. That tells me you're not conforming to the law of inertia, that there's some reason why you're slowing down in your stroke cycle too much. Where your right arm is 0.2 meters per second faster than your left arm, why are you getting more speed out of your right arm than your left arm? We have to kind of look at each, and it takes a couple hours of going through the velocimeter really to understand it and to take the information and get it out. But it's very helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really awesome stuff. That goes beyond a lot of the stuff that I'm teaching. being able to get that kind of data is just phenomenal. Now, there's a couple things that I wanted to throw out there and get your take on. One is the high elbow pull, and the other is this idea of stroke rate or cadence. These are just the things that I kind of see out there that people are chatting about and talking about the importance of them and why it's good or why it's not.
Let's start with high elbow. And I tell people when they come here, I'm probably going to teach them 10 new things about their freestyle. And number 1, number 2, and number 3 on the priority list in freestyle is pulling with a high elbow, pulling with a high elbow, and pulling with a high elbow. And, after that, everything else is important, but is less important. Mm-hmm. In other words, Kevin, if they don't get that right, they're never going to get really fast. And unfortunately, there's a lot of ways to get it wrong. And really, there's not very much margin of error when you look at the pulling motion of the really good fast swimmers. It's, number one, it's not comfortable. It's not a natural position we would just automatically go to. It's not that powerful, to be honest. It has to become more powerful as we practice it. We substitute some major muscles like the latissimus for some muscles around the subscapularis that aren't that strong. And why do we do that? Because we create less frontal drag in that motion. And I always say that it's the frontal drag that really trumps the power. So by sacrificing a little bit of power and reducing the drag, we actually end up with a net velocity that's greater. And it's just unfortunately not a natural position to be. We have to internally rotate the shoulder. We pull in this kind of awkward position. Mm-hmm. And if you outsweep or insweep or you drop the elbow too much, you don't get a do-over. I mean, you make that mistake over and over and over again. And they all lead to significant slowing during the cycle. So getting that right is first and foremost. And we sometimes will spend a whole session just on the pull, getting the pull right.
Yeah.
What does that feel like? And then having them photograph it and having them do that, correctly. First one arm, then the other. We have all kinds of drills we do just on high elbow pull.
Great.
Stroke rate is also important. It's not, and stroke rate really is boiling down to what technique are you going to use? Are you going to use the shoulder driven? Because if you are, then stroke rate becomes extremely important. And you're basically saying, okay, I'm not going to use my arms as an airplane wing anymore and a paddle. I'm going to change over and start using them as a propeller. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you do that, make that technical change. Okay, I'm relying on stroke rate and high shoulder-driven type of freestyle with a higher RPM. Then the higher your RPM goes, the faster basically you're going to go. But what is sustainable? How high can you get and hold that for 1,500 meters or 800 meters and get out and live to talk about it? Right. And you have to train at that stroke rate. One of my favorite devices is the tempo trainer that Finis makes.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the most valuable tool in the kit, because if you decide you want to go shoulder-driven freestyle and you want to really rely on stroke rate as your primary force for getting through the swim, then you need to train at that rate. You need to train at a 86 stroke rate. And most triathletes won't get that high. But if they can't get to 86, they should try to get to 80, or 78 or something. But when they're swimming at 60, and they don't have a kick, and they're not rotating their bodies very much, they're really comfortable. It's what I call a Sunday stroll swimming technique. That's a survival stroke. They can go a long ways that way, but they're just not going to go very fast. So if they decide they want, and some of them just can't handle high stroke rates, so let's start rotating our bodies so we get more power out of each pull we take. We're not going to take as many of them, but let's make each one count. Mm-hmm. Augmenting it with coupling forces. And let's try to build your kick up so that instead of just letting the legs fall and go along for the ride, we now start to get some baseline speed that's meaningful. If we can prove your kick 0.1 meter per second, and you're in that race for 30 minutes, that becomes a lot of meters when you multiply that out. So, developing any kick for them with a slow stroke rate will make them much faster, but particularly learning how to really use their hips and rotate and get a lot of what I call coupling out of their body. Mm-hmm. And so, that can be a good technique when they can't handle the stroke rate. Typically, when your kick is not great, is a better way to swim. But it requires more fitness and more training, too.
Absolutely. There was another video I was watching on your site about doing these drag drills and, kind of making yourself have more drag. Can you talk about that and why that's important too?
Yeah, one of the reasons we do those, and I have three favorite, and I call them drag appreciation drills, because you don't feel, when you're swimming, there's a lot of things going on in the water, but you feel basically the power sources on your hand. You're feeling the water as you're pushing backward, maybe feeling it on your feet. Maybe you get a little sensation of the water running across your body, but you don't feel frontal drag forces as they're happening. There's just too much going on. So what we do is we isolate those forces so that you actually feel and how powerful they are. Mm-hmm. One of the ones we use is, which I love, is kicking with fins on, because you really, the frontal drag is proportional to the speed squared, which means the faster you go, the more drag you're going to create by a long shot.
Right.
We use fins to get up speed. We have them put one hand straight out in front of them and one arm straight down at the bottom. And when they first do that, they've never felt drag forces like that. It's like towing a bucket behind you. And although that's not exactly the replication of the stroke, it shows them that by dropping the elbow deep and then comparing that with holding the arm out to the side, having it bent 90 degrees and hanging where just the forearm is hanging down, they see the drag is significantly less. We change the shape of the arm. Yeah. So that's one example, but there are two or three others that I like to do, mainly just to let them say, oh my God, this drag really does matter. I mean, we're talking about water here, which is 800 times denser than air, and it doesn't take a lot of air for the frontal drag to just bring you to your knees. So that's why it's sport of millimeters, tenths of seconds, and degrees.
Yeah, that's right. And in case anyone listening isn't quite following along, I'll post the link to the video there so you can actually see it. So I'll put that in the show notes of this show. So the other thing that we wanted to talk about was you have developed a swim bench. Can you talk about that a bit and how that came about and what the benefits are?
It's really just a modified Vaza ergometer. Vaza is a company out of Vermont that makes sort of the swimming equivalent of the Concept 2 rowing machine. It's an erg with a bench on it and a couple of paddles that really enables. It's really designed for freestyle only. But there were several things that I felt could be improved on it. So what I did is I live in the Keys and a lot of boat builders and welders down here, and I found a really good welder, and I had him really modify the existing model, and I changed it in several ways, which I think make it much, much better and certainly a more comprehensive workout. The first thing I did is I added a headrest so that instead of lifting your neck up on the bench and looking forward, you've now got your head down where it's supposed to be when you're swimming. I got rid of the paddles. Instead, I put posts on the side. So you're pulling with a very high elbow. There's no way you can pull on the modified bench without a high elbow. With a paddle, you can move your arm wherever you want to, and most do pull incorrectly. Mm-hmm. But the post with the pad on the post forces you to really pull correctly. The third thing we did was we made the bench, instead of flat, we made it rotate in 10 degrees or 15 degrees in each direction and put some Velcro straps on so you kind of basically strap yourself in. And it forces you to have to rotate your body with each pull. Which is good, and it takes a lot of core strength. In the water, we want to see you rotate 50 or 60 degrees, but on land, when you weigh zero in the water. In land, you weigh whatever you weigh. When you go 15 degrees, if you go 20, you slide off the bench because the gravitational forces are so strong, but it takes a lot of force to move your body at full weight 20 degrees or 15 degrees in each direction. The fourth thing we did is we added some pulleys for the legs. So we put these Velcro straps on your feet and work the up kick, which is an important part of your kick that a lot of athletes don't have and don't develop. And you can also turn over on your back and work the down kick. So we work the legs in one direction, and then we rotate and put you on the other side and work the other. So if you're just doing freestyle on that bench, to do a full set with the legs and the recovery and a freestyle set, it's like an hour workout.
Right.
And the nice thing about it is when you get in the water, it's like your motor memory just reminds you like you're being on, you feel like you're on the bench swimming. and it's interesting, but it does seem to reinforce the right pull and the right motions, the head down, the kicking strength gets greater. It definitely seems to have an impact on swimming skill. And the nice thing is you don't have to run down to the pool, and you can jump on it in your basement, get on, do an hour of that workout, and basically you've probably done an hour and a half kind of workout in the pool when you get an hour in on that bench.
Yeah, that's awesome. So do you just use that in your facility there, or is that something you're actually selling now to people that might want to, that have interest in it, from elsewhere?
I've built 10 prototypes, and I'm talking right now under non-disclosure and confidentiality with the company to manufacture them. And I really, as much as I love the modifications, I'm so busy doing what I do. It takes me like 2 days to put one of these together after it's, been welded. So I usually do it if somebody really, really wants it. But my long-term goal is to really make a better machine, a professionally done one, and do it right, and really make all the modifications that we have done pretty well, but make them just better. And I think, I don't know how long that's going to take. It might be a year. In the meantime, if somebody twists my arm hard enough, I usually give in and make one for them. But it's really going to ultimately be produced by somebody else.
Yeah, awesome. So that's really about all I had. Now, do you have any other tips for triathletes looking to get faster or improve their freestyle as we sign off here?
There's a lot of things that are, I think, important for them. And I think one of the other issues, we touched upon the mental approach to this. And think of yourself as a swimmer. At camp recently I gave with Andy Potts, and it was one of our campers said, I don't want to do flip turns. It's a waste of my time.
Yeah.
I don't want to streamline off the wall. When am I ever going to? You have to start thinking and acting like a swimmer to go fast, whether you're in the ocean, open water. You start to learn to streamline your better when you streamline off walls. You swim with a better streamline. Breathing is another area. I commonly preach to athletes, swimmers, or triathletes that even though they can train hypoxically, they need, when they're racing, to get as much oxygen as they can.
Right.
And some people race hypoxically, and that makes no sense to me. I can see why you train hypoxically, and not all the time. You have to get used to getting as much flow of oxygen, the most important nutrient, into your body as you can.
Right.
If your stroke rate's high, you got to learn how to get that breath in quickly and not, slow your rate down. So breathing is sometimes a big issue. We have to spend some time teaching them how to breathe properly, breathing back instead of the side, and breathing at a very low profile, and getting the breath in quickly, and lots of them. So
yeah,
I think that's probably the best advice I can give is, for the triathlete is to learn the fundamentals, focus on the details. And if your coach isn't helping you do that, then, let us help you.
Are you doing like clinics all over the U.S. now, or just can you talk about that a little bit, like where your clinics are and how can someone find out more?
We have 2 locations. Hopefully they'll serve most of the U.S. We have one in L.A. and one in Islamorada, Florida, where I am now. I go back and forth, but I spend more time in Islamorada, and I have 2 of my kids that coach out in L.A., Richard and Amy. They're both great, teaching the same fundamentals. And they work with athletes all the time, and I work with athletes here. We have camps that we're doing. We did our first triathlon camp this summer with Andy. It was really fun. We're going to do more of those. I'm not sure how often, but we might have 2 or 3 a year. We're going to also we have private instruction available all year round, and that's one-on-one. And we get more done that way, but it costs a little bit more, but it's also, for someone with really limited time, it's probably the best way to get better quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we'll have to link to the upcoming clinics. Yeah, do you do them on a regular basis or just a couple times a year?
The camps we run, actually, we ran our first camps in LA this year. So we did one in the spring and one in the summer.
Okay.
We have 5 in Islamorada, and we're going to try to build to having 5 camps in LA. So at this point, we have planned, I think, a spring camp and a summer camp for next year. We'll have at least 2 triathlon camps next year in LA. We have not done a triathlon camp in Florida yet, so I think we're going to plan to do that as well. So I would say the camp times will be sometime in the spring and in the summer, and then we're not sure. We haven't defined the triathlon camps yet, when they'll be.
Awesome. Yeah. So, Gary, it's been really great having you on the show, and I really enjoyed what you talked about today. And again, if you, the listener, want to check out what Gary Hall Sr. and the Race Club are doing, just go to theraceclub.com. Is that right? Raceclub.com?
Yeah, theraceclub.com.
Yeah, and there's some awesome videos there. I'll put some links in the show notes today. But yeah, thanks again, Gary, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to another episode covering swimming and triathlon mastery. To get your free online swim clinic, just go to tryswimlessons.com. Give us your name and email, and we'll have session number 1 off to you right away. Begin your process of befriending the swim and laughing at the water now.